Hello and welcome, everyone. It's the Transform Your Relationships show, and I'm Laura Rubinstein here with the wonderful, whichever way you are, Dr. Rhoberta Shaler. Hi, Roberta.
Hi, Laura, and I'm here with the wonderful Laura Rubinstein. So it's going to be a wonderful show.
Indeed, and we talk about lots of things on the show, and today is a almost, I feel like a touchy subject. It's about sharing the truth and the heartfelt truth. And I was thinking about this today as I was getting ready, and that, you think about those people who say, can I tell you something? Can I tell you from the bottom of my heart, I mean this, and then blah, comes out. Something really hurtful or shameful, or it doesn't kind of feel heartfelt. What is that all about? We're going to pull back the cover on this.
Oh, yeah, and that cover needs ripping off, baby.
It also
Because,
comes in the form of brutal honesty.
yeah,
I'm going to be brutally,
my
yeah.
favorite two words to take out of the English language coupled together.
Yeah, so this is really important stuff. So let's go back to that question. What is somebody really doing when they say that?
Well, there's a couple of things that are happening. First of all, they really want your permission to shame or blame you. And
No,
yeah, so can I tell you something? The answer usually ought to be no, I don't think so.
not right
Um,
now.
but we get into these entangled relationships where we think that this is being honest and open and all. And really what we're doing is opening ourselves up to being hit by a hammer in the face. And that's not a smart thing to do, but many times it's sort of false intimacy. It's a false sense of having a deepening of relationship by being able to have somebody say something ugly to you and you're supposed to accept it as constructive criticism. And that's not very good. That's unhealthy. So we need to really talk about this topic, which I'm really excited about because people don't have the right to dump all over you in the name of help and caring.
Yeah, it's really kind of worse than just saying, I'm mad at you. And just, I don't know which is worth it. They're both bad to just dump on somebody and shame them, blame them, criticize them, when that person who's expressing all this is really just trying to ease their own feelings of discomfort or upset.
Or they want power over you. So often we talk about hijackals. Well, hijackals will do that to you all day long. Like, well, I see something I think would be helpful for you to know. Do you mind if I tell you? And so you think, oh, well, we're getting up close and personal. This is great. And then they go, bleh, dump all over you. Well, then you say, oh, I'm supposed to, person up and take it, and I'm supposed to take it in, and you give your power away to that person, and then you walk away from that person, you're a crumpled mess, you're puddled on the floor, and then you think, oh, I'm not a very good person because I'm a crumpled mess on the floor. I should be able to take it. We get in this awful cycle.
And so if you're the person delivering this, if you've ever said to somebody, may I coach you on this? May I give you some feedback? You're asking for permission to, dump all over them, in other words. And you don't feel, you could see they are actually crushed at the end of that and they're not left whole and complete. Was that your intention? I mean, like, if that wasn't your intention, then the delivery you need to take responsibility for.
Yeah, and I would say this, if you think that the relationship is not that intimate, say no. No, I'd rather not hear that right now. It's not that I'm in denial or anything. I just think our relationship cannot sustain that at the moment. I know that's asking a lot of yourself to do that, but sometimes it's good to say no. No, I'm not up for it today. Take it on yourself. But if you do what you just said, that you deliver something and then you notice that the other person's crushed at the end, what's up with you? maybe your communication skills need a little refining.
Let's talk about that because I think to have really effective communication skills, you really have to be in touch with your feelings and really make friends with those feelings. Because if you're trying to reconcile a feeling and you think by, helping somebody is going to reconcile your feelings, just know that. No, become very aware. So, like, let me give you an example. Earlier this, over the weekend, actually, my husband yelled at me from the other room, and we don't yell. Some couples have yelling things going on, and he was like, "Come here," and it was with a little tone of anger. And I had made a decision a long time ago that I didn't want a relationship like that. I didn't communicate that, but I always modeled that. And this was the first time I really recall him doing this. So I wanted to nip it in the bud, but I didn't want to say, when you do this, it makes me feel that, blah, 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 that kind of thing. But I wanted to do it in a really loving way. So it took a long time for me to figure out what was I feeling and how could I say this, what I wanted in a way that I'm not crushing his ego or making him wrong, right? Because he's not wrong. Maybe he was venting something and had to deal with it, and he had some stuff going on as it turned out. And so I thought about it, and I in a loving way said, could I make a request? And, I uncovered the fact that I had this hidden agreement with myself that I would never yell, and I never wanted that in our relationship. And was he up for that? And could he do that? And the next morning, like, he's like, yeah, fine. The next morning he was that much more loving to me, and he was talking all about the fact that that's why I'm in this relationship with you, because we don't let things fester, blah blah blah. And so he was all happy about it, and I'm kind of moved about it because it was a risk I took because I didn't want to put him down. I had all these thoughts and feelings, and to me that's my process of being really able to tell the truth. And I have another card is you can tell feminine power card that says you can tell the truth without harming anyone. That's kind of my motto. And actually, he's the one who gave it to me.
Yeah, you said something important there was that you thought about it for a long time. And many people don't. I've said before on this show that I believe that when you blurt, you hurt. And you won't blurt if you stop and think about it. So the respect and honoring of your relationship that you demonstrated by saying, let me process this first before I open my mouth. So good and so loving, so invested in the relationship. So, go girl, that was perfect.
Thank you. And I'm not only am I invested in this relationship, but I'm invested in me growing as a person and learning how to communicate as effectively as possible. And it's a gift I give myself. I also look at it, and I do agree that it's a very loving thing to do. And I know that feel so much better about myself when I do that. Because, if I said to him, can I be honest with you? This really hurt, blah, blah, blah. I could have done that, but I didn't get the chance to give myself the gift of what was I feeling and what do I need, and really sit with myself and work through this. And for anybody who hasn't done it, try it. It may feel uncomfortable, but there's so much gold in there when you're it's like digging in mud. It's not the most comfortable thing, but there's something satisfying about it, you know, from
Mhm.
a soul perspective and feeling place.
Well, I think that, you just said something else, there's a lot of growth, and growth is gold. So you need to dig in
Yeah,
and find it, because
that's the pathway.
yeah, that's the pathway. But, we pay lip service to wanting wonderful relationships, but a wonderful relationship begins with me. I have to be in a wonderful relationship with myself so that I have the gifts to give. We talked about that a lot. And one of those gifts is honesty, and another is respect. And then another is that you have to build trust. So you take those three things. Well, they go in order. If you can be respectfully honest in a way that honors the topic and the people, So you're not putting somebody down to talk about a topic, and you will build trust. But if you just say, well, I'm going to blurt and therefore hurt, you will erode trust.
Even if you blurt with the self-help format, you know, it really hurts me when da da da, or I feel this when that. It's just like that format is training wheels for a toddler, but it's
Well,
not for an adult, and it's
I was doing an interview this morning. I was on the Powerhouse podcast this morning
yay.
with Candy Barone, and it's going to air in the first week of April. And I was saying to her that these old techniques of communication, the iMessage, these old things, those are just veiled shame and blame. And if we're operating from veiled shame and blame, our relationships are going to suffer. And yet we're going to feel so righteous saying these things like in this very considered way. But this very considered way is not functional, it's not helpful, and it doesn't move the relationship towards intimacy. It just allows you to unload. And if that's what you want, go do that on a piece of paper somewhere out in the backyard where nobody can hear you.
Amen.
Get it out of your system and then come back to the relationship that you hope you're creating that is loving and moving toward rich, deep intimacy.
Yeah, and if you have the capacity, or if you want to grow the capacity to feel, truly feel, I mean, that's what I was doing on Friday night or Saturday night, whatever that was. I was feeling into this situation like, God, I didn't feel good being yelled at or having this yelling in my house. It was directed at me. It startled me. I could have gone on and been very righteous about that. And I owned my feelings. I said, yeah, I didn't feel good. I didn't, and I had to check in. Does he love me? Does he, do I love myself? Whatever. I had to go through all
Do I
those things.
allow this to happen?
Yes. And, I just had to figure out how can I express this in a way that works, that is from love, like nothing's wrong, but there is something I want, and he's not wrong and I'm not right, and if there's just something I want, and I want for our relationship, and I want for myself, and I want for him. And it opened up so much more because I got to find out what was on his mind, and it took a time. We didn't do it right in that concentrated moment. I made the request, he took the request, and in the morning we had a very lovely conversation that he brought up. But I was whole and complete because I had processed it for myself. I said, what is the essence of what I really, really, really want, and what was I really, really, really feeling? And it's always an ongoing development of of discernment, of understanding what am I going through, and what gold can I find here for myself. It's like, oh, he's giving me an opportunity to feel something. What am I feeling?
Yeah, well, that shows a great deal of awareness and insight, and I would welcome anybody to have that level of insight and to take the time, because we tend to, as a people, we tend to feel our offendedness first, and then we want to defend, and that doesn't work. So you just demonstrated something that I love, which I think we have a continuum. When there's heightened emotions, we either come on this end from the intent to defend ourselves, or we can go to this end, which is the intent to learn about ourselves and the other person. So when you're in that inquiry, that's great. But if you ever hear yourself being defensive, try and rush right over to becoming curious about yourself and the speaker, so that you can have that wonderful exchange that you had with your husband. And I just want to throw in a little bit here for those people who may have had this experience. I had a house guest recently, and the house guest reminded me of something I had to learn, a thing I used to do, and I didn't realize how annoying, how imperious it was, and self-centered, and a whole lot of things that I didn't want. And that is that my house guest, knowing that I was nowhere in the room, would start talking to me. Right? So that the idea was that that person could stay where they are, but I should hear the sound of their voice and make my way to them to demonstrate some interest. Now, that's just wrong on so many levels. And I had to learn that. It hit me flat in the face, like, whoa, wow, I am doing that. Somebody brought it up to me in one of those conversations that we were just talking about. But then I watched this person doing it. So I simply said, let's make an agreement to speak to each other when we're in the room. And if one of us wants to engage in a conversation, let's go to where that other person is. And we made that agreement. But there are things like that. Like when you started this conversation, Laura, I didn't realize that he had some heightened emotion to that degree. I just thought he was yelling from the other room. And that popped into my mind immediately, because that was quite recent in my experience, that's a pretty imperious thing to do unless you're in an emergency. Get here, I'm going to be hit in
Right.
the head by the bed, But it's really important for us to know that this way of communicating and allowing somebody to know what you need and want is best done when you can see each other's eyes.
Yes. And I actually asked him, I said, would it be okay that if you are able to get up, that when you want my attention,
Come
you'd
to where
actually
I am.
come to where I am and look me in the eye type of thing. Um, but it came after, a lot of thinking of how am I going to make this request? And I was asking, I asked for it, I would like to make this. Would it be okay? Would you be willing to? And, and I'm willing to hear no. If he wants to yell at me, then, I didn't think he would be willing to yell at me, but I thought he'd be willing to do the opposite. Not to say it might not, might happen again. I might accidentally yell at him, if it's an urgency. He did want me urgently somewhere, to see something on TV. However, we do have a pause button because we have TiVo and it can pause live TV. So that's good news. In the past, maybe not so much, but it's pretty amazing what speaking the truth from love really is and what it's not. And when you think you're doing it versus when you're really not, and you're just trying to expel or go. I love that. Say not the timeline, but the continuum. It's
from the intent to protect myself, to defend myself, to the intent to learn about myself and the speaker.
Yeah. So when you want to give feedback to someone, really check yourself. What are you really doing? Now, we see this a lot with leaders in the world. They want to coach other people because they know the right way or a better way, or they know that what that person is doing is not the best for them.
No, or they think that what that person's doing not the best for them because they weren't curious at all. They were coming with I can tell you something, listen up.
Right.
Very, very different. It's a very imperious thing. Like I know someone who does that right on the stage and say, well, could I coach you on that? Like, I'm not broken. I don't need to be coached on that. If you'd like to speak to me privately, that's fine. But from that place of, I know better than you, so let me tell you. And that's not coming from a place in my life of, being way too on top of it to accept coaching, but it is the attitude that I have something that you don't have, and I therefore am going to ask your permission to tell you what I'm going to tell you anyway, especially on stage, because you're not going to say, no, I don't want that. I might, but most people aren't.
I agree.
It's not kindness, it's not loving. So going back to what you said, like wanting to say something from love, the first question is hold up the mirror and say, could I hear this if it were coming my way as coming from love? And if the answer is no, then keep your mouth shut.
And, that brings up such a huge question, because there are so many coaches out there, people who are in leadership positions as well, who say, well, if I coach them publicly, then everybody gets the benefit of it.
Yeah, well, that's again veiled shame and blame often.
Yes.
And it's not that it's not true, it's how you do it and from what intent you do it. And if you're not skilled at keeping the other person's self-esteem intact and you're just sharing information from your point of view, I think it would work better for me if I heard this, or I could hear this better if you said it this way. Would that have any meaning to you? That's coaching. But if somebody says, you should do it this way because good people do it that way, effective people do it that way, and therefore the blame and the shame is you're not effective and you're not good.
Right.
Yeah.
There's got to be some, I love that how you said leave the person intact with their self-esteem. It's not about them being able to take tough feedback. Feedback is awesome when it is delivered from a respectful place.
And often, I mean, certainly you pay people in private to tell you the tough truth, but often that's not really what's going on in the public sector. You have to treat each other in the public sector as equals.
Mm, mm.
Like if you're on stage with somebody and they didn't ask to be coached in front of millions, and you just say, well, I just heard something. May I coach you about that? They're not being respectful. They are trying to one up you, and they may veil it, but it's shame and blame that's veiled, and they're just showing you that they don't have respect for you. It's all couched in very, very cloudy, shadowy, shady stuff.
And if you ask that person, they would probably deny that completely.
Oh, yeah, because they
Because
are
they,
in denial.
yeah, because they're in denial because, well, they're unaware.
That's denial, too.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So, so how can we, if we are in that position, how can we become aware? How can we get out of denial?
Well, that's a big deal. I mean, that's a lot of work to come out of denial around anything because it's comfortable in there. It's scary to come out of it. Living without denial, my partner always says, I really miss denial. Because you got to face it when it's in front of you. You got to see it. You got to deal with it. You can't push it off or shove it under the carpet or whatever. And that may be what you're facing in the mirror. So, how do you do that? You do it with intention and love. You just say, who do I want to be and how do I live the values that I say are important to me? And is what I'm about to do or say in alignment with those values?
Like really in alignment.
Honestly in alignment, not in a way that's just making a case for it, but is honestly in alignment.
Because brutal honesty is not honesty.
No, and it's completely unnecessary because what's brutal about my saying, Laura, there are certain things in my life that cause me to just want to crawl into a hole. And when I hear them, I just withdraw, and I don't want to be withdrawing. So I just want to say that I could hear things if they happen this way much easier. Now I'm talking about me. I'm not talking about you. And you might then get curious and say, well, what way is that? Because I'd like our relationship to deepen. And I tell you, and then you say, I can do that. But if I come up to you and say, Laura, I don't like the way you're talking to me these days. Who the hell do you think you are? Like, we're going to have a problem.
I'm sorry. No.
It's the refinement and the more elegant, more self-aware, more loving, truly loving self-inquiry before we open our mouth, and then valuing the relationship in a way that both people feel it. They feel the value, and therefore we get more emotional intimacy with that person when it's done well.
I had a friend long, long, long time ago sit me down and said, Laura, I have to tell you a few things. She had I have to. She cut me off for, she wasn't communicating me for a while, and I had inquired, is everything okay with us? And she said, well, we should get together. So we got together in person, and I actually regretted it after that because she proceeded to tell me everything that I did that upset her, that, is why she was distant. And so my response at the time was, thank you so much for sharing this with me because I now know what it feels like to be the recipient of someone offering this kind of feedback. and it doesn't feel good at all. And I never want to do it to anyone else ever again.
Lovely.
And it was really a gift that person gave me, because I know I've done that. I had done that um, to other people. And to be on, and she was being all loving, but the things that came out of her mouth was not taking any responsibility for anything, just telling me what she didn't like about me.
Yeah, and
And
hoping she had your permission to do it
yeah,
too.
and what if it was like, I don't like your style of coaching or something. And she had always asked me for coaching over and over and over and over again.
For free.
For free, yes, for free. So, and again, this was a couple of decades ago. So, it was a long time ago, but it stuck in my mind as a pivotal point to be really aware of how it feels to be on the receiving end of somebody saying, "Can I give you some feedback on you? Can I be honest with you? Can I give you some coaching?" You know, like all lovey. And and that was the end of the relationship at that point. It did not
Yeah,
deepen it.
I'm
Just
not surprised at all. And that when you just said all those things, I just want to sum it up with this. Don't offer coaching. Wait until you're asked. I mean, just don't do it, right? I think that I just made a very strong declaration in my own mind, and I'll write about it that, you know, unasked for feedback on any level is unasked for, and that doesn't give you the right to offer it.
if you need a venting partner, go vent with somebody in confidence about whatever you need to vent about. Get it worked out. But right, the offer, don't on somebody else. It's just not good for anybody. Not
And
good for you.
don't paint it into something that it isn't.
Right. I think that's the whole point of where we came from for the intention of today was like, you may be thinking you're doing something good, but you're not deepening that relationship. You're hurting themselves and you're staying in denial about your own situation. And I been there and we're all human. We may do this. So, so give yourself a break if you've done it and you've done it and you may do it in the future. But if we're staying cognizant of our reality of what we are feeling. I mean, if we heighten our awareness to our feelings, it's all evident of what we should be doing. It just takes a little bit more time because translating the feeling into actual expression takes time. To do it from love, one of the other feminine power cards I just, is speak the truth from love without hurting anyone. And actually, that combined too. So you can say anything to anyone when it comes from love, and speak the truth without harming anyone. When you put those two together, it's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy.
That's right. It takes a lot of self-awareness and a lot of practice. And when in the question, shut your mouth. Right? One of the things that you can do is you can have a rehearsal in your head. I'm about to say this. Run it over in your head. Could I receive that in the words and the tone and the body posture and the facial expression? Could I receive that in the way I'm hoping they will? And if the answer is no, you just saved yourself a lot of problem because you kept your mouth shut. And that's growth. That's learning. And that's never wasted.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so much good here that, advice giving you were talking about is another thing. Is when we don't give advice or coaching, we're actually honoring the other person's wisdom, honoring the fact that they do have solutions, that they do know something about their truth and their expertise and they have their own style, and we're honoring it. In fact, this feminine power card says, honor the wisdom of another to heal him or herself. So if somebody's struggling, but they're not asking for your advice, let them, because that's really honoring their wisdom to figure it out, to get through it. The practice, by the way, is to refrain from giving someone advice today. Just listen and trust they have the wisdom to find their own answers.
Yes, and if they ask you, then you would do well to have the skills to deliver it without shame or blame, and that you would soften whatever it is that you have to say into small enough pieces that the other person would find it acceptable to hear. And that's your part of the equation. That wasn't just an open invitation to say anything that you want when they do ask you.
Yeah.
And that's the responsibility that each one of us has. I mean, I'm a relationship consultant. People ask me questions, but do I just say, well, you should do this? No, you know, we have to develop a conversation around something and say, in my experience, I know these things about that. What do you think is actually happening in your relationship in regard to the information I just shared with you? And then we have a dialogue. And sometimes, yeah, because they're paying me to tell them. And that's why I don't practice as a psychotherapist any longer, is because I want to be able to just share. Like if somebody asks me a question straight out, I want to be able to answer that question. But I do it with, my favorite saying is the genius of good communication is to be totally kind and totally honest at the same time. And that comes from John Powell and from a book called The Secret of Staying in Love. And I want to also give credit to the people that I have those boundaries from coming from the intention to protect myself to the intention to learn about the speaker. That comes from the work of Jordan and Margaret Powell. Jordan and Margaret, oh golly, their name is escaping me, but the
We'll
book
put
is
it in
called
the
The
context.
Secret of Staying in Love.
Hmm.
Um, why is their name escaping me?
We can
But
put it in the
very,
comments.
very old book. Um, I know what the book is called. Do I have to give up me to be loved by you?
Mm. Oh, sounds like a great book.
Yeah, it's an old book, but just so important to know that I didn't make that up. They did. But it's been a valuable, valuable tool in my collection for a long time.
Awesome. Well, this has been an enriching, enlightening, uh, really to the point episode. So I hope those of you who are watching this for the replay or live take it to heart and take it in and see what kind of increased and enhanced communication you can have in deepening of those relationships.
Yeah, and it's Jordan and Margaret Paul, Paul.
Awesome. Thank you. Awesome. So we will see you next time in a couple of weeks for another episode of Transform Your Relationships Live.
Right. Stay honest with yourself.